What's up, guys? Leo here, and today I will be talking about how I got my Duke ED admissions file and what I learned from it, as well as what you guys can learn from it as well. So honestly, my initial reaction to my Duke ED admissions file was that it didn't say much because it was just pretty short and concise, didn't really have any comments for me, and it was just relatively short overall. It was also very hard to read, and there is a lot of symbology used, like symbols. But I think in general, people's admissions file differ a lot. So depending on the person, you could have a very detailed, in-depth admissions file, or you can have just a very simple and bland one like I did. So now going through my admissions file and seeing exactly how I got into Duke, at the top I see my name and the majors I declared. I also see my high school, where I'm from, and the fact that I did early decision. And then down below, there's some interesting things that take place. We see my class rank, my GPA, weighted GPA at the time, and it also says the number of APs that I've taken out of the total number of APs offered at my high school. It also puts the highest GPA at my high school. And it says, some other stuff similar to that. It has my test scores up top, and it mentions if I'm test optional or not. So I guess a general rule of thumb for you guys is to really try to max out your academics. That means to take challenging classes throughout high school, and in general try to get very high SAT and ACT scores, as well as try to maintain those high grades. But of course, at the end of the day, college is not everything. Rather, we should try to strive to learn rather than just do things for grades and not really we should certainly try to achieve and do well and get into top university if you can. But at the same time, if you don't get into a top university, it's not the end of the world because, or it's not even close to the end of the world, because there are so many opportunities, and college is really just a starting point for life. So now to the reader evaluation. So I had 2 reads about my application, and in general, my total score for both reads were actually exactly the same. They were both a 16 out of 20. So there were actually 6 main categories that Duke looked at. And they were their curriculum, so how hard the classes you took were, the difficulty of your classes, academics, so that's like your GPA and how well you did those classes. Then we also had teacher recommendations, so letters of recommendation. We had extracurriculars, essays, and test scores. So in general, also this year, Duke did not rate essays. So everyone got a 0 for essays. But in general, just to be clear, essays definitely do matter in the application process. And you should definitely try really hard in your essays because they're something that is usually overlooked in college admissions. But Duke did not rate essays the year I applied, which was this past year. So in general, the curriculum just means how hard the classes were, or the difficulty, or how much you challenge yourself in your classes. Academics represents how well you did in those classes in your GPA, in number of APs you took, in your AP scores and stuff. Test scores just means SAT, ACT scores, I guess. And ECs is just extracurricular activities, and R is just recommendations. So one really important thing to note here is that Duke highly emphasizes academics. It's very interesting because, they have 3 categories that are essentially tied to academics: curriculum, academics, and test scores. So to really try to maximize your chances at Duke University, try to really maximize your academics. Even though as much as extracurriculars, essays, and teacher recommendations are emphasized, at the end of the day, academics do play a big role as well. Specifically for curriculum, I got a 5 for both reads. And I believe I got a 5 because I took basically around 17 APs, and our school only offered around 27. So that means that's pretty good. And just a rule of thumb, if your school doesn't offer as many APs, that's totally fine, because in general, colleges don't compare applicants from different schools to each other directly. Rather, they compare applicants from the same school or the same area, or from schools that offer around the same number of APs. So you definitely won't be penalized for taking less APs because your school offered less APs. And in general, for academics, I had a pretty strong for academics as well. I got a 4+ for one read and a 4 for another read. And I believe this is because I really emphasized academics throughout my life, and I try to get high grades. I ended up with, I think, all A's and 1B in high school, so that was nice. And as terms of recommendations, I was actually quite surprised about my recommendations. I thought I had good recommendations. However, unfortunately, for recommendations, I only got rated a 3+ for one read and a 3 for the other read. This really means that my recommendations were not super stellar. They were like probably more on mediocre end, more like the standard recommendations. So I was a little bit disappointed about that, but that's okay as well. And for essays, again, they did not rate essays. For ECs, I got a 4- on both my reads, meaning my ECs were not the most strong, but that's okay because I didn't really do too much outside of the classroom. And in terms of test scores, I got a 4 for test scores, which is pretty good. Well, because considering the fact that I did not even get above a 1500 in SAT, and I did not do well in the ACT either. Got, I think, a 34 in the ACT or something like that. Yeah, I got a 34 in the ACT. Super score, which is not comparable to applicants who usually apply to Duke. So I did not get a 5 on test scores. So if you were looking to get a 5 on test scores, really try to get around like aim for a 1550 on the SAT or higher, maybe even a 1570 on the SAT, and maybe a 36 in the ACT for sure. Since Duke really emphasizes academics. And as for my reads and the notes that they took, so there's always initial read when just scan through application. So that's like the reader said it's worth a look. The reader mentioned uses math passion to serve through STEM education. So my entire story was really having this internal passion, this internal love for mathematics and science in general, in STEM, and really utilize, both learn about this idea of math and science myself, but as well, my main thing was really community service and really showing love to other people and serving others through teaching them about math and science and STEM in general. So the reader also mentioned there's appealing curriculum, and it's interesting because the reader said I had warm and positive recs, including my stats teacher mentioned that I was a class influencer in stats, which was pretty nice to hear. And yeah, they always mention they actually mentioned the exact APs I took as well as like the difficulty. Like they mentioned I took AP Chem, a B in AP Chem or something, B- AP Chem. And they said got all A's and with 1 B- or something. So they really care about those grades. They said I did some other stuff, and yeah. And the readers also said I had my math passion shows. I'm an AIME qualifier and some other random things. So yeah. In general, I felt like the readers did like my application, which is why I got admitted, and yeah. Now it's advice time. So for you guys, I think the most important thing to take away from this is don't overlook academics, even though there is a certain threshold at which you should not strive to do even better in academics. I think academics are still very important to Duke, so really aim to get a very high SAT score or ACT score if you can. Hopefully like a 36 on the ACT or a 1570 plus on the SAT if you can. In terms of APs, try to take a lot of APs, but don't take like every AP that possibly exists, but just try to take a really challenging course load and really maintain those high grades and high GPA, because that's what I take away from this at least. Since I was not expecting Duke to emphasize academics this much. And in general, really try to stand out to your teachers, have those great recs. And what I mean by that is just like do simple things, right? Like greet your teacher every day, say thanks to your teacher after in the class, really participate, engage in class, raise your hand, and just try to, I guess the rule of thumb, I guess, this here is just try to enjoy things. Like, enjoy learning, enjoy homework, enjoy grinding, enjoy all these things, because in the end of the day, like, I mean, even though, like, this stuff is important and getting into good college is important, but at the end of the day, enjoyment and enjoying the process and making new friends, enjoying the process of making new friends, and just, like, finding joy in the midst of everything you do is just really important, because you should strive to be joyful in all circumstances, no matter what happens. And I think that is something we should all live by. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video, and I hope to see you guys sometime again soon.